So today we are looking at proposal arguments. If you ever have to write a grant, if you ever have to apply or some other kind of funding or support, or you want to do a project and you have to officially prepare something for it, proposal arguments are how you do it, right? It's in the name. You are writing a proposal and trying to prove why your proposal should be accepted, right? This week, if I remember correctly, this week we also look at some common errors, some common grammatical errors when we're writing, sentence errors in particular. One that drives me nuts, and it's perhaps one of the most common errors, something we call mixed construction, where we jam two different kind of sentences together and they don't actually make sense grammatically if you're reading it in terms of syntax, grammar, parts of speech. Those are two things that they're two half sentences that should not go together. So we will look at that. So let us start with proposal arguments. Let me start in before I share the screen. Right. So of course, our objectives for this week is to understand a proposal argument, outline a proposal argument, and write an essay based on an outline. Now, if I haven't mentioned this before, even though it's not a required assignment to turn in, the outliners, but if you want to practice developing outlines into essays, I highly recommend it, whether you're turning it in or not. Another thing you can do to practice, take your sample at writing and try rephrasing it according to the different types of arguments, right? So if I was defining carnival, and I will let you in another secret, what does carnival mean to me is a definitional argument, right? You're trying to explain what carnival is. It can also, you could tweak it, say, how has carnival affected my life? Some of the essays I saw were more cause and effect, how carnival affected my life. Another essay you can do riffing on the what is carnival to me, if you're looking at a compare and contrast carnival versus quote unquote recreation, or if you want to do a resemblance argument, I firmly believe carnival is a religious experience, so I probably would compare carnival to some kind of religious experience. You can compare carnival to protest action. I remember 2015 when the joint trade unions marched in Port of Spain. It was old mass, literally old mass. And you had people with all kind of placards, old mass placards, you know. And so it was a very Trinidadian protest. So they took something that is intrinsic to carnival and what we do in carnival, and they applied it to active protest. And you would have heard by now carnival as a form of rebellion. So that would be an interesting resemblance argument to make. Evaluation. Is carnival a good form of rebellion? Is it a viable form of rebellion? Still, One of my former students, well, that was her song for this year. It was this year. Crown don't make a Kaisonian. That's an evaluation argument. That was that was this year. I don't know. This year feel like last year, so I can't tell. I think it was this year. It was this year. Crown don't make a Kaisonian. And then proposal. We have this big discussion going on right now about making Carnival virtual. I don't see it. I see elements maybe being virtual. I don't see the entire thing being virtual, but someone needs to come up with a really good proposal if that's what they're going to argue. Because all masquerade requires that active participation between the person masquerading and the person watching. So I don't know if you could digitize that kind of relationship. But that would be a proposal argument. So even as you are getting a hang of the different types of argumentation, go back to something you've already done, which is the writing sample, and start tweaking it to see how you could make different arguments out of it, right? And I give you a little secret. As researchers, lazy ones anyway, once you find a source, that source could give you 20 different papers. You can do 20 different arguments on that one topic alone, right? So I have, like, for example, I came up with my own theory, and my own theory is very useful in a plethora of things, right? So contemplating, for example, Afrofuturism, which is a form of science fiction, but then looking at African futurism as African masquerade, because that's something I'm interested in and something I've done research in, and I have a lot of information I could pull and retweak and make a new argument out of. So one of the benefits of learning different types of argumentation is that you get to work smarter, not harder. You can generate 3 or 4 papers using different arguments about the same topic, right? You would find too, when you get to longer projects like a thesis, you will be combining these different styles of argumentation. So your introduction might lend more towards a definitional argument or a cause and effect argument. And then your discussion might be an evaluation. Your recommendation would be a proposal argument, and so on and so on. So these different types of arguments can feed into a larger project and serve a specific purpose in your project. So when we're talking about a proposal argument, and I generally link proposal to, I don't know if you've heard of a process analysis argument, expository writing. You ever heard of process analysis? No? So process analysis is where you spell out a process step by step, explaining each step. So in a proposal, what you're doing is showing the possible consequences if this action is adopted and why that's a good thing. So some things to consider when you're doing a proposal argument. You want it to have some kind of weight. You want it to be an important topic that you're tackling, right? So you don't want, for example, to propose that every child should have a soccer bag at lunch because soccer bags are nice. that is not a significant enough topic. Now, if you're going to say that sugar has cognitive benefits, and so if you give a child a sucker bag right before they go back to class, you're actually sparking their metabolism and sparking the processes in their brain so they work harder. I'm adding some kind of gravitas to the idea of children and sucker bags and lunch. But it needs to be a topic that is significant or important enough, right? Not just to you, but to as many people as possible. You don't want to promise the moon and the stars in your proposal. You never want to make the claim that if you adopt this, everything is going to be all right. Because that's a hard claim to make, even harder for you to control, because you're only a corporal being. You're not a deity. You can't make everything happen, right? So be very concerned or be very aware that what you're proposing isn't a silver bullet or a cure-all. Be very conscious of the fact that it won't work for everybody or it won't solve everything, and don't try to oversell it. People will be skeptical of your proposal. The more controversial the topic, the more skeptical they will be, right? So, for example, if I go back to carnival and virtual, if I say, screw the tourists, forget them, and let's just do a nationwide carnival, stay in your own community, throw up your bands, throw up your tents, and do that, and really luxuriate in the communal, cultural aspect of carnival. Screw everything else. People might go, well, what about the artists need to eat? And I'm like, yes, they do, and we will pay them. But if we secure carnival for ourselves first, when borders open back, tourists will come flocking in, because that's why they came in the first place, because it was our thing, right? So be very aware that people will be skeptical of what you have to propose. You will need to counter that skepticism. You need to work out or dampen that skepticism as much as possible. And it will resemble an evaluation argument. So when we talked about an evaluation argument, we said we're looking to see if it's a good or bad example, or if it's a right or wrong choice to make. So clearly, what you're arguing is that it is a right choice or a wrong choice to make, right? And there's a consequence-based evaluation. So I'm proposing we do this because X, Y, and Z. I'm proposing we don't do this because X, Y, and Z, right? So you might have noticed that I arranged the different forms of argumentation because there are elements in each that you can use. So you can use definitional and cause and effect in an evaluation argument. And here in a proposal argument, you could use elements of an evaluation, right? So you're looking for something that has some kind of gravitas. It must be important. It must be a striking recommendation. Do not promise the moon and the stars. Be very realistic with what your proposal can achieve. Account for the skepticism that you will encounter, because not everyone will think that what you are trying to do makes sense. Or the most typical reason people are skeptical is because they're afraid to move in either direction. They're comfortable with what they know. And you're offering an evaluation. You're showing why this is the right or the wrong choice to do. So the proposal argument really combines a lot of what we've already been looking at with the other argumentative types. So here are some ways we can the organizing strategy. And remember, the organizing strategy is that general approach to the argument, what I want my overall argument to do. So, as usual, introduce and develop the problem, capture your audience interest in your problem, give the background to the problem, including previous attempts, if any, to fix the problem, right? So actually, this is slightly different than your other introductions because you're specifically aiming to fix or solve or mitigate something, right? So you want to introduce and develop the problem. You want to capture your audience interest in your problem, give the background to the problem, including previous attempts, if any, to fix it, right? So one of the biggest problems we are facing right now in education is that students are now all home. We want to do online education, but at least I think it's over 60% of our school-age children have no access to the internet, right? So the problem is, how do we continue education when schools are shut down? How do we facilitate this? If we don't, and here I'll be capturing the audience interest, if we don't continue our education, how far will we fall behind? Behind our neighbors, behind our trading partners? How will we be able to keep up with technological, financial, trade developments? Trinidad was primarily old school, so this is giving background to the problem. Trinidad primarily relied on face-to-face instruction. Face-to-face instruction in the age of COVID just is not possible. And with the previous regime, what was that, 2014, 2015, somewhere around there was an attempt to distribute tablets and laptops. This attempt was not in conjunction with expanding internet access. So it did not really address the issue of creating multiple platforms for education. Because if I cannot access online education, whether I have a tablet or a laptop makes no difference, right? So we want to introduce, capture attention, give background, and here's the significance. It turns out that internet is a right, not a privilege. And we are in a deep crisis. It's affected everything. It's affected Common Entrance, it's affected CAPE, it's affected CSEC. It affects our students who are preparing for different exams and their self-control. It affects all aspects of education and society. So this is a very serious potential crisis that we are facing if we cannot address this problem properly. Now you want to present your proposal. So bear in mind that when we come here to presenting your proposal, we're now talking about your thesis statement. So if you're doing the outline, you're starting here with your thesis statement. What do you propose? Right? So I want a good summary of your claim and end theme. And that's the start of your outline, but this is the second part of your overall argument. You want to sketch out what you propose. So I propose that in addition to securing tablets, actually I would say this, in addition to securing tablets for primary school children, we also need to secure, work a program with B Mobile. If you present student ID, you get free data. We will set whatever data cap is fiscally responsible or non-prohibitive. But if I am a student, a Trinidadian-born student in primary school or secondary school, and I present you with a student ID, I should get, for primary school, let's say 100% free data a month, however much gigs would, is the lowest gigs or whatever they want to work out. I haven't, this is off the top of my head. And for secondary students, 90%, for tertiary students, 50%. And I say that we have these educational packages, data packages, right? So summarize the outline, summarize your proposal and your thesis, and then you spend some time outlining what the proposal actually is. The next step is to justify your proposal. Why should we do this? Right? And here's where you can break down then into the second and third paragraphs, or outline your proposal basically in your introduction. So you do all the work of 1 and 2, the organizational strategy, in your introductory material, and then you spend the rest of the time developing each reason one at a time. So each paragraph is a reason why your proposal should work. And of course, your conclusion, well, respond to rebut if in each paragraph. And then your conclusion. And here, slightly different again, you want to rally your audience to act or adopt your proposal. So typically when you're doing a proposal argument, you're saying it is the right choice because of the following consequences, right? You are addressing any potential skepticism that will come in addressing opposition and either conceding to certain points or rebutting counter arguments. And of course, end with a bang. So if we embarked on and they already did it, they have an adopt a school program. So if we embark on an adopt a school program where corporate sponsors and private citizens can donate tablets to schools in need, and B Mobile and or Digicel, it's easier with B Mobile because we own B Mobile, 51%. B Mobile will provide student data plans with the following prerequisites. Any questions so far? So I'm going to ask you to write a proposal, an outline for a proposal on any topic you like, and develop an introduction or an introductory paragraph, right? So not to put too fine a point on it, the organizational strategy, especially when we talk about how you formulate your introduction or the introductory materials, will help you write your introductory paragraph. These are some of the things I need to include. I need to include background to the problem. I need to include why it's significant. I need to include something that will grab my audience, and so on and so on. Not literally in that order, except that your thesis is the last sentence of your introduction. For the proposal, you can either flesh out the proposal in the introduction, 1 or 2 sentences, so, and then sum it up in your statement, thesis statement. If it's a very complex proposal, you might want to spend 1 paragraph on what the proposal actually is, and then the next 2 paragraphs on why the proposal is a good idea, right? So those are the 2 options you can do. Either my proposal, and it depends on what you're proposing. If you're proposing that corporate Trinidad and private Trinidad should work together to secure devices and internet accessibility for primary school students, right? That is my proposal. Actually, I summed it up into a thesis right there, and I could maybe do 1 or 2 sentences, right? And then I can spend my time showing why this will work. And of course, for a proposal like that, you'd want some incentives. I know corporations get tax write-offs for certain charity works. I think depending on the size of the donation, private citizens can also get tax refunds or tax rebates based on charity work, but I heard that from my accountant friend. I never looked it up past that, so I don't hold me to that. That's something to investigate. So that's pretty short, pretty quick, right? So any questions so far before we move on to mixed construction?
Hi, good evening. Hello?
Yeah?
Hi, I do have a question. I just wanted to deliver a message if it's okay. Trevin Lane ran into an emergency and she said that she would not be able to join the class this evening.
Okay. Not a problem. It's all recorded. Any questions before we move on? Right. So that's proposal arguments in a nutshell. It really is making a proposal and proving why your proposal is good. You can use techniques from evaluation, especially the ethical argument, consequence-based argument, right? The next thing I want to look at Any questions so far? I know this one is a lot to take in, especially when we talk about the 10 sentence patterns. And these patterns create an infinite number of sentences, but there are certain underlying grammatical rules or structural rules when creating sentences in standard English. And one of the major violations of that rule will cause mixed construction. So when you're looking at the predication errors, for example, they cause us to equate the wrong part of speech with each other. Right? So, I had this question for one of the classes over the summer, and it was a mixed construction sentence. Let's see if I can find it. I'll show it to you. And I felt bad. I kind of felt bad for using that so no one got that sentence right. And so let me see how wrong it was. Right. Right. So this sentence here, right? Doctors, an honorable profession, requires a great attention to detail and a lot of memorization. Right. Now, who could spot the error here? And I felt guilty because it's a little more complex than spotting whether it's two nouns matching together. So, what is this sentence trying to say?
That could be a doctor is an honorable profession.
But is doctor the name of a profession?
No.
No.
No, it's not. No. Right? So we cannot say doctors an honorable profession or doctor an honorable. A doctor has an honorable profession. The profession is medicine, right? So we're matching two different things, right? Now, if I said being a doctor matches profession.
Yeah.
But naming the person doctor, that's like saying teachers, and it's teacher isn't, teacher's the person, right? Education is the profession. Or chef is the person. Cooking is the profession. Right? And so the sentence goes awry because we are talking about a doctor like a doctor is in the name of the title of a person. So the sentence goes off. Nobody got it. And I felt very guilty because, but if you stop and ask yourself for a hot question, is a doctor the profession, or is the doctor the person who has the profession? Then you say, oh, that's the error. Oh, I see. But yeah, we do it quite a bit, partly because when we're talking, we depend on people to understand what we mean in context. And usually, and I find it's actually worse with social media. We try to assume what the person is saying, and so the words mean less and less. So the people writing all kind of thing that don't mean what they're trying to say. And they feel like me, and I know, and you know words, and they say, but that's not what those words mean. They want to fight it. Oh, but I meant to say, it doesn't matter what you meant to say. What you said was, right? It's not being sensitive. It's just that's what words mean. Language has power. Language has meaning. If you don't use your words correctly because you're in an informal setting, so you think people will just understand what you mean. But this is how we end up in conflicts. This is how we end up in serious misunderstanding. You lose a friend, and you don't know why. It's because your words were not precise. Your words actually mean something. So I told, for example, and Risha, I'll preface this by I heard this from a St. Lucian friend of mine. So if I have the meaning wrong, blame him, don't blame me. But he told me never call a woman salop in St. Lucia.
What?
Right, good, right. Because it doesn't mean what it means in Trinidad. When you salop in Trinidad, it means you know how to, but you just don't care. You're not motivated. Whatever, I go do that, right? So a salop person in Trinidad has the ability, for example, to wash 20 cars in a day, but after the 5th car, whatever. And so why you so salop? Why you just don't finish the job? It doesn't mean that in St. Lucia. It means something completely different, and you might get slapped for it. So as an example of being very aware of the words you use and what those words actually mean and how they will impact another person, right? I remember reading an article from a young woman who did a TEDx talk, I think in somewhere in Texas. I think it was in Austin, Texas, or wherever. And they had invited her to on the panel. It was a whole program dedicated to diversity, prejudice, and along those lines. And she was, I think, the only African American woman on the program. And the person, she realized the stage manager, the showrunner, or the people behind the scenes who were trying to help her, the woman wasn't being deliberately racist or rude, right? But she had made some assumptions, and it came out in the language that she used. And so in the article, the presenter was saying, it's not your intention, is the impact. Because you might have good intentions, but if your words have a certain impact, it doesn't really matter, right? And when we are writing, the more formal the writing, the more we have to pay attention to what the impact of the words will be, not what I intend the words to mean alone. Those two have to be as closely related as possible. You want to make your impact reflect your intent, right? And so when we have mixed construction, we are breaking that bridge, that alignment between intention and impact. We're letting our language get away from us. And so we will not have the impact that we intended, right? So I want to look at another common error that we make. And this one now is very, it has been recently complicated by a campaign to use the plural third person pronoun for non-binary individuals, right? Which my argument is that using a plural pronoun denies people of their individuality, and so it's equally problematic as giving you a gendered pronoun if you do not identify with a specific gender. Come up with a new word. I think that's the best thing, because saying they, when I mean a single person, I find just denies that you're an individual, that it robs you of your individuality. So, where am I? Yeah. So this one is pronoun errors. questions? Any questions so far?
No.
No?
No, I understand the pronouns and the relation between the singular and the plural.
And also, relative pronouns tend to mess with people. And while that can sometimes be used, that as in the relative pronoun that can be used to refer to people. I prefer you use who, because there's no mistaking. Who is only for people. When you use that as a relative pronoun relating to people is a bit more confusing. It's only for specific instances. When you're not adding any new information, you can use that. But it's easy, whenever you use who, it is always correct, right?
When do you use whom?
Whom is the objective form of who,
Okay.
right? So if you're replacing a noun in the object, a noun as the object of a sentence or action, you use who. W-H-O-M. If it is the subject that you're replacing with the pronoun, use who, W-H-O, right? So when you're using it as a relative pronoun, it is usually the subject. The doctor who studied at Mona campus will be in Trinidad December 30th,
Okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
The who is replacing the subject of my sentence,
Okay.
right? As opposed to,
Then you would say, I'm thinking, then you would say the doctor to whom the book was given.
yes, because he's the object of that sentence.
All right, good. Understand
Right.
it. Yeah.
So W-H-O-M is the objective form, W-H-O is the subject form, and W-H-O-S-E is the possessive.
Yes.
Right? So whose are these?
Right.
Means who owns these?
Right.
Right? So who, whom, and whose. And there's a tendency to overuse whom because we think it's more proper. But if it is used incorrectly, it's more disastrous than not having the pronoun at all, right? And that brings me to another point in terms of, and you really should do a video on that, passive voice versus active voice. So once upon a time, in formal writing, especially in the British style, and this is really a once upon a time, there was a lot of passive voice because he wanted to avoid interjecting the personal pronoun in your writing. So there was a tendency, if you didn't want to say, I measured the liquid in the test tube, right? People will say that the liquid in the test tube was measured. So the passive voice takes away the agent from the sentence. The sentence actually doesn't have a subject, right? The main noun in the sentence is being acted upon as opposed to doing the action. But there are millions of ways to get around using the personal pronoun. So and still using the active voice. So the active voice is really the subject does the action. It makes for more dynamic sentences. It reduces grammatical errors. It makes sentences less clunky, unwieldy, hard to read. When you when you read people like Rolea, Lovelace, Paul, Carolyn Cooper, a lot of these writers, they use active voice. Passive voice rhetorically, because it removes the agent from the sentence, tends to make you more sympathetic to the noun in the sentence. So if you're using passive voice, you're using it specifically because you want the reader to have an emotional reaction to the subject in the sentence. So you will find, for example, when you're reading about atrocities and slavery, you will find a lot of passive voice because it's supposed to give you that emotive feeling, that emotional response to what you're reading, right? But by and large, when we are arguing something, when you are writing something, it's better to use active voice. Make the subject the actor in your sentence, because it allows you to write clearer, shorter sentences that hit home, that hit the point directly, right? This is half stylistic, but also the majority of issues that grammatical issues really comes from this attempt to write in passive voice all the time. Because you have to rearrange a sentence. You have to take out the subject. If I'm doing a proposal, I don't want to take out the subject. I want the subject to be front and center because I want you to see the consequences of choosing this proposal, right? So I don't mean to sound ageist or anything, but modern writing, we tend to use active voice more than passive voice. Oh, okay. I'm using my screen. Boy. Okay. All right. Since we're just I'm just going through now what's on Canvas. The next thing for this week is looking at how to do an explication. So the major paper that you have to write for this class is based on Dragon Can Dance, based on you doing a basic, a straightforward analysis. We will be looking at some theoretical analytical tools. So this is practice in how to extract information from secondary sources, from text. So technically in this case, you can treat the book as primary. A literary book is considered primary, a primary source. Any analysis or any articles you might read and analyzing the book, those are secondary sources. But the literary text itself is a primary source. So this is practice in extracting information, analyzing information from primary and secondary sources, right? It's a little easier in COVID because you don't have to go and interview anybody. So, but the primary, the literary text is a primary source. All right, so the video I'm going to show is a very quick how to and doing an explication, and an explication is just a fancy word for close reading and analysis. But as a word you can use to boast, yes, I did a proper explication of this text. It really means you read it line by line very closely for what it can reveal and what meanings you could pull out of it, right?
Could the other word for that be an abstract? Is that an abstract?
No, an
Oh.
abstract is a very short proposal / summary of a paper that you will be presenting.
Oh.
This is analysis.
Okay.
Sorry, I have no idea what happened to the music. Oh, okay. Perfect. Okay, at the end of the module, you'll find an interview with Lovelace. Technically, we are supposed to be starting our discussion of the book. So if I'm to put two and two together, I know Chrisan was looking for the book, for copies of the book last week. So I'm assuming most people are still getting copies. And so what I want, while if you already have the text and you've started reading, start taking your notes. So some of the advice in doing the explication, looking at what the text is actually saying, looking at what we call the meta text, or all the other things that would filter into how the text is shaped, right? So this book is published in 1979, so it was written in the 70s. Spoiler alert, there are elements of Black Power, of the Black Power movement, and particularly a disappointment in how the Black Power movement seemed to be fizzling out in terms of active revolution. Though I think there was a misinterpretation of what revolution is. And so as you're reading, you are paying attention to not just the plot, not just the characters, what the characters might represent. What is the underlying message or argument in the text, right? What is it trying to prove or establish or show us? What evidence that you can pull from the text to support what you think is going on, the argument being made, etc., etc., right? What are the I suppose it's based on the idea that the artist is a social filter, and embedded in any art or cultural product is the zeitgeist, the ethos, the the atmosphere of the author's time. What would have been the ideologies, the philosophies, the way of seeing the world, the crises going on in the world? What would be, not just holding up a mirror, but forcing us to look at ourselves anew? And what are we supposed to see? What are we supposed to grasp from it? So these are some of the questions as you're reading. And we unfortunately don't have the luxury, unless you're a very quick reader, of you just reading the text and then reading it a second time more slowly to start extracting these things. That's always advisable, but if you are like me and a slow reader, try doing both at the same time. Usually, especially in a class setting, I can't read one book. Actually, I just can't read a book multiple times back to back. I need space in between, because it would be all too familiar and unexciting and hard to sit through. But try doing both. We're looking for both plot, we're looking for structure, and we're looking for that larger message, right? Man, I think I raced through today. It's only 5:19. I think part of the problem is that we would have been spending some time discussing the book, but if people haven't gotten to the book yet, there's very little we can discuss. The extra readings for this week include an interview with Lovelace. So him talking about his own work. If I remember, I have another one in his collection of essays where he specifically talks about writing The Dragon Can Dance, and his take on the importance of dance as a spiritual act. It's very interesting, right? As in his book, Growing in the Dark. There's a series of essays in there. So what I can do now, since, well, an hour and a half, yeah, I'm putting my mark an hour and a half. Questions, queries. I've gone through most of the first assignments. And I think for those of you who either submitted late or resubmitted, I think you're getting the hang of it. If you haven't received a grade yet, more than likely it's because it wasn't the appropriate for the assignment. I know I have at least 2 essays, not outlines. It should be open so you can resubmit. The idea, really, what I want mastery. So I have no problem with resubmitting as much as you need to. If you go, you know what, I think I can do better, that's fine. And so these are all open at least till the end of the month if you want to resubmit. Right?
So just to clarify, that includes the ones that were already graded.
Yes.
Oh, no.
If
Okay.
you the usual deal is if you get less than 70%, there's an opportunity to resubmit.
And get a higher grade.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the point is learning experience and getting mastery of the skill of writing an outline. And once you get the hang of writing one, it becomes easier writing other outlines. The main problem is making sure that it matches the argumentative style, right? And that is based on the question you ask of your topic, right? So if your topic is Moko Jumbies, the question you ask about your topic will determine what kind of argumentative style you need to use. If you ask what is a Moko Jumpy, then is what kind of argumentative style? Anyone? Anyone want to guess? If I ask the question, what is the Moko Jumpy? What kind of argumentative style am I going to use?
Definitional.
Definitional. Right? If I argue if I ask what are the benefits of teaching young people to stilt walk? What kind of argument? I think there are two possible argument styles you can use here. So the question is, what are the benefits of teaching young people to stilt walk?
I think you can do a causal.
Causals, one.
Yeah.
There's another one we could do.
No, it won't be a resemblance. I know causal is one, is it?
Kaba, you were going to say something?
Can you use evaluational to kind of evaluate what happens after you take? Okay.
Right. So it could be causal or it could be an evaluation argument. Right? Specifically a consequence-based evaluation argument. If I said using teaching Moko Jumbies to at-risk children, at-risk youth has the same benefit as reform schools.
Resemblance.
Yeah, resemblance.
Yeah.
Or it could be more positive that teaching like the Dragon's Den is as influential or anti-crime as a Panyard. So the Dragon's Den in Kokoree he teaches stilt walking, he teaches young people to do Moko Jumbi. And it has made a positive impact in their lives. It's used as an intervention program, right? And then of course I can flip that and say using the Moko Jumbi as an intervention program, teaching Moko Jumbi as intervention. So we just did that one today. That would be what kind of argument?
Proposal.
It would be proposal. right? So the question you ask of your topic or the question that the topic elicits will determine what kind of argumentative style you need to use, right? So if it is something that is relatively unknown, but you think it belongs in a specific category, then you're going to do a definitional argument. Or you think it's been miscategorized, you're going to use a definitional argument. So carnival has been miscategorized as a frivolous party, just a jump up. Carnival has the potential to be so much more than just a jump up. It is still, and someday when COVID is over, I'll get to do those interviews. It is still pretty much a ritual practice and a ritual space, right? So that's me defining carnival or redefining carnival. Or my favorite one, you ask people and they still tell you that carnival is friend. I don't know why. Even a carnival that came from France came out of
Duchess?
Egypt via Rome, via Rome, via Greece. So, hopefully y'all will get the books so we can talk about them. Your final paper hinges on having read The Dragon Can't Dance and really sparking your thoughts on what it means, what the text means, what you get out of the text. It's always good to have some kind of conversation. That's how it works, preferably student-led. I have my own ideas of the book. I've written on it. But that doesn't mean there aren't new ideas and new interpretations that people can get. And that's what makes it interesting to me. So hopefully it should be available in most any of the major bookstores. It's just going out and getting it. And
What's that, Dragon?
yes.
Try, you guys all can try paper base in Hotel Normandy. Most likely they would have, because I think 90% are local writers, authors, that they have their books. And you can try RIK, and you can try the specialists on that street with Strand coming down is Abercrombie, not Abercrombie.
You mean
The
on
other one.
Shagreed?
Ah?
It's on Shagreed Road?
No,
The Source?
no, the specialist is the name of the bookstore. When you head in south, as you leave where Strand Cinema was the gas station, and you go down Richmond Street.
Oh yeah.
You can try those.
But it should be in most of the major ones because Loveless is a major author. So
Yeah, but Mohammed's didn't have, when I checked them, and that other place on Henry Street, they didn't have it. They had Salt.
Nigel Can.
Huh?
Nigel Can.
The one on Henry Street, the cans on Henry Street, they didn't have it. They had a few copies of Salt, also by Earl Lovelace.
Also very good, but for completely different reasons. But it also mentions Carnival and Salt, but I digress.
Okay.
Salt is just harder because it's one narrative told 4 times.
Oh.
From 4 different perspectives.
Oh, okay.
And it takes a while to catch on that it's supposed to be the same story, just from different points of view.
Okay.
But yes. So hopefully y'all will get it, and by next week we will be at least in chapter 5 or more, depending on how fast you read. Okay. So before we go, any more questions? Any questions?
I just have a request before we go, please. If you will permit me.
Uh-huh.
Right. Remember, for Calypso exam, the 3-hour exam, we had topics, and one was to write a Calypso, 2 verses and a chorus.
Yeah.
One was domestic abuse. So I picked domestic abuse because it was close to me. I have 2 friends who actually died from beatings. One was a neighbor, and over time she developed high blood pressure and she got ill and she died. But the one that touched me the most that I wrote about was a friend of mine. She was beaten so badly by the husband, or the common law husband, that her brain was swollen and she was in a coma, and within less than 2 weeks she died. So I cannot remember. That is the shortest time I've ever written a Calypso. Normally it takes no weeks to write rubber, in less than 20 minutes. And in the exam room down there in John D, I felt so, I started to cry. I said, oh gosh, no, I start a wiper. I said, I don't want people see me, you know. Because all I remember was the first 2 lines. Were you comfortable, my sister, when you were getting licks from your mister? That's all I remember. So if you come across it, could you send it to me, please? All I can remember is the first 2 lines. And it has meaning for me because Vanessa was a friend of mine. And I wrote about her. I remember writing about her, take care of her children and all that. I can't remember anything else.
I'd have to ask, because technically we're not supposed to share anything from exams, so I would have to ask.
Oh Lord. Oh Lord. You have to ask Professor.
I'd have to ask the exams committee.
Oh shucks. Oh boy.
It's not even with our department. This is rules of the university.
Oh. Well, I won't want you to get into any trouble.
But no, I'd have to ask, because you're not asking for questions, you're asking for a specific response.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the meaning is.
Yes, and explain, if you could explain what I just told you, because you know it had that effect, and she was a friend of mine. And I actually saw myself, the grave was facing east, her head was to the west facing east, and my back was to the east, and I kneeling at the grave. I mean, like if the whole room was a cemetery. It had that effect on me, you know. It touched me, you know. So I wrote about that domestic abuse, you know. So, but if it can be done, well, I'll try and write out something and hope that I get to remember what I did write. But all I remember was the first 2 lines. I can't even remember the chorus.
I won't make any promises. I'll inquire and see what can be done.
Yes, all right, but don't do anything to get in trouble, please. Please. It's just that it's, you know, it has sentimental reasons. That's why I'm asking. But I didn't know that they had the rules per se about that. I didn't know about the rules, you know. But well, if it can be done, it can be done, you know. So, and that is the shortest time that I have ever written a Calypso. Trust me, in less than about 20 minutes. The words just started to flow. That's something, eh?
I'll ask Chrison, and then I'll see if who's left in the
Oh, all right.
examination committee.
Yeah. But as I say, don't do anything to get in trouble.
No, I just asking.
Yeah. So. And explain to them why, you know. So, but, you know.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do the quick roundup, and I will see you all next week Monday, hopefully with some chapters of Dragon Can Dance under your collective belts.
Okay.
Right? So just go around the room. Let's do 5. So we don't all start at once, but major takeaway things you want to go clarify, either one or both.
That anybody or you were choosing somebody?
Anybody.
I need you to.
I want to go back a bit to the explication. The explication is when you read your book or whatever, what you gain from it, what it's telling you then, and it comes like you are bridging a book. Is it the same thing?
If you're watching a book,
Abridging a book.
abridging means to shorten.
To shorten it.
Yeah.
Okay. But you put in this in your own words, what you got from it. What
Yes.
it's telling you then.
So this is analysis.
Analysis. Okay.
Right.
Analysis.
So you're looking at what is on the page and trying to determine what it really means.
Right. What it's telling you. Right. What it means.
Right. So the example I like to use the visual arguments to show how you explicate. Partly because I don't think people pay enough attention to ads and what ads are really doing. Ads are packed full of rhetorical devices meant to persuade you to buy whatever the product is.
Mm-hmm.
So they're really good visual arguments to break down and analyze and show how you can do an explication. And so when we look at the BMW ad, on the surface it's a don't drink and drive ad, but there's a lot more packed into it. You know, the question we raise, so why a white model? What does that tell us about the assumptions of the advertisers? The words they use. So we're talking about human parts. What is that? Human parts aren't as original as machine spare parts, right? Yeah. And so it actually kind of does two things, because it very subtly tells you really want to buy a BMW because BMW has the best spare parts in the world, right? Without even having to say it. So there are a lot of things that get buried into the ad. And it's the same thing with text. There are a lot of things buried in the text, right? I know another student complained, and I've actually been hearing this a lot. This is I want to say it's an anti-academic stance, because we are often accused of putting things where things don't exist, but they're there, right? We're not adding meaning that's not there. It's in the text. It's embedded in the text.
You just have to filter it out.
Yes. And by this I mean, we're not saying that the author intended X, Y, and Z, because I was not in the author's head. But what the words on the page do, the message the words deliver, right? And some, or as a left-leaning Afrocentric feminist, right? The concept of creativity from an Afrocentric point of view is very spiritual, and you're exposed to elements beyond your control, and you end up filtering messages from these elements beyond your control. So you are never 100% responsible for what ends up on the page or on the canvas or in your song. There is always a secondary message or multiple layers of messaging. If you don't want to use it, use a spiritual explanation. If you use a psychological or a cultural explanation, we filter our cultures every day. So when I tell you to pay attention to your audience and the culture of your audience and whether the culture matches yours, is because culture shapes how we interpret things. Culture will shape how we write about things. There are certain assumptions, certain understanding that is born of our culture and embedded in us before we are even cognizant of it, right? So if you talk about speech delivery, for example, how many people notice the lower the register, the lower the voice, the more reassuring it sounds? Do you know why that is?
Because they want to persuade you.
No.
No?
I mean, they want to persuade you, so they're using a lower voice, but why do we respond to a lower voice in that way? Assuming that if a man comes to you and he speaks in a lower voice,
Yeah.
that he's more trustworthy, that he's stronger, that he's more competent. Why do we assume that?
Oh.
We
And
live in a
people-
patriarchal society, you know so?
Yes, yeah.
So the stereotypical values of masculinity will reassure us that this person is trustworthy to complete whatever task or to do whatever he's supposed to do, right? As opposed to someone came in a high-pitched, whiny voice or a high-pitched voice. I shouldn't say whiny, that's actually me putting a cultural assumption on the voice. So someone comes with a high-pitched voice, right? We assume that person is innocent, kamashans, as they say, someone we need to look out for. Because we are geared to think that a high-pitched voice belongs to a younger person, someone who might be a neophyte, new to the world. And so we are more likely to want to protect, want to believe, want to support that person. Right? These are cultural things. No one has to explain it to us. It's the culture we grow up in. So as a writer, this cultural milieu, this soup you've been imbibing all your life comes out in ways you don't even know, ways you don't anticipate. And if you are not very careful, and even with the editing process, actually, you can't get rid of all of it, but you can mitigate a lot of it, but you can't get rid of all of it. So as writers, it's not just our own thoughts. We share a worldview, a point of view, and it comes through in our writing. The assumptions we make, right? And if you are a contrarian, like myself, you start to notice the assumptions everybody makes and go, oh, I see the assumption you're making here, and I don't know if I agree with that assumption, right? So it's very interesting. I've been training my mother to reassess things she says, because she will say something and then she goes back. It's like, not that that's a problem, you know. It's like, yeah, you catch yourself, you catch what you're saying. But we do it all the time, right? If someone gives you a bad drive on the street, we're going to assume the person is male or female.
Normally, they would say it's a female.
Female doesn't do female all the time.
I don't know why.
Ever. Who has the lower premiums for insurance, car insurance?
We do.
So what does that tell you?
It's
Who's the pay for driving? Because the lower your premium, the less likely you are to be in an accident.
Yes.
So you will cost the insurance company less. So if women in general have lower premiums, the assumption is women are better drivers.
Yeah, we are safer drivers. Yeah.
However, if you get a bad drive on the road, or if you're behind someone who don't know what they're doing, you're going to assume it's a woman. Right? That is the culture. Not the reality, but that's the culture. Right? And so yeah, again, that comes through in writing, in music, in movies, in everything, all the time. And if nothing else, at the end of this class, you'll be watching everyone kind of pokey eye from now on and going, I don't think you mean what you're saying, or what's your real motive here? Just a little more aware of the world and communication, and how, to sound very cynical, how so many things we see, read, and hear trying to convince us of something, for good or bad, right? So nobody wants to share major takeaway, something they want to go clarify later. I have no sharers today.
I just wanted to say one thing.
Uh-huh.
I know you just said that we'd look at everybody else Koki eye, but like yesterday, when I was redoing my assignments, I watched myself Koki eye. Because after doing a peer review and trying to assign marks, I looked back at my own assignment and I was like, how is somebody going to peer review this? It made no sense. And it made me reflect on what I did, because when you have to mark somebody else's work and you're like, oh wait, people can't really assign marks to this because it doesn't fit any kind of criteria. So it was just really eye-opening, and I think everybody should try and do their peer reviews. You might laugh at yourself something. I almost cussed myself yesterday doing it, but it was a good experience.
Thank you. Yes, the peer reviews will, if you do it correctly, will reveal a lot about yourself. And the question is, do I do that when I write? Oh my goodness. Or if you're lucky enough to come across something that you find exceptional, you go back and look and see, do I achieve this? Can I do this? What's missing? So thank you for that reminder. Yes, please do your peer reviews. It will help everybody. Right? And so if there are no other comments or questions, I think we can call it a day.
Yeah.
Right? Please get the book. Please read as much as you can. And libraries are open as well. So
yes.
that's another resource for finding the book. And I will see you all next week. Next week we are going into using evidence. Right. So looking at a different skill. So these 5 modes, we're kind of finished with that. Assignment 6 is really for you to find 3 articles. So the assumption that you would have already been reading the book, it's kind of built into that, right? So next week we'll see where we are and if I have to push that back or what. Okay? So I will see you all next week.
Thanks, Dr. Keeler.
Thank you for class.
Oh, and one plug. Don't forget Saturday with the webinar discussion.
I actually thought it was this weekend, and then I realized, oh no. So yeah, I'll be there.
So Saturday coming, which is
Saturday
Yeah.
at 4 p.m.
the 24th.
Yes.
At 4 on Zoom.
Yes, on Zoom, and it should be on YouTube as well.
All right.
So I think I shared the invite via WhatsApp. So follow the instructions on that. Right? So, see you all Saturday then.
Can you email the invite, please? Because my phone crashed, so I don't have any access to WhatsApp or anything. So everything is just email for me right now.
Okay.
Thank you. Will you do it on, when you mail in, will you do it on Canvas?
I could post it as an announcement on Canvas, yes.
Okay. And then we go into the link from there?
I'm not in control of the Zoom.
Oh.
So
all right. Okay. I will work around. I don't worry.
That will be Gansham. Mr. Hamid.
Oh, is he doing all right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Because I'm not too internet savvy and all that, but I'm learning.
Don't worry, we're gonna make sure you get through.
Thanks. And as I always say, my brain not young yet, all your own, you know.
No, that's all right.
Oh gosh.
It's okay.
All right. Okay, so bye. I will email it and I will post it on Canvas as a announcement.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Bye, Olia.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Marie and Kamba, Tanika,
Okay.
Lieutenant,
Okay, dear. Bye, guys.
Katie, Jessie. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. About this thing now.